We're going to go ahead and start our presentation. And first of all, I wanted to thank everybody who's here and then everybody who will be watching just a recording of this. Real estate is very unique, and when you go into the MLS, especially for those who are new, you get to see all sorts of real estate product. And we're not going to talk about all the product lines today, but we're going to specifically talk about land. And land is part of the MLS, and even if you go into the MLS and do a search of land or lots, and just look at all the land and lots on the market, you'll find that there's a lot of land and lots even in our market. Whether they're farm, whether they're acreages, whether they're city lots. And a lot of times when brokers look at that, they have no idea what they're looking at, because those photos are usually just a picture of a field with grass growing on it, and the grass could be 2 or 3 feet tall, and that's all you see. And it's really hard to figure out what goes beyond that. And that's why this presentation is here. So we as brokers, I always say, can guide our clients, whether it's the buyer or the seller, in the purchase of land. And today we'll talk about land at different tiers. And we'll talk about buyer pools, we'll talk about your client, the seller, we'll talk about how our new home division here at Keller Williams has been a facilitator and a complement to many brokers here locally in the process, because like I mentioned, a lot of people look at a piece of dirt and that's all they see. They just see, a piece of land with the grass 2 feet tall, and they don't understand where to go next with that. So today's presentation is going to be exclusively about land. So when we talk about product of real estate, and I like to just use this as an example, when you go into Home Depot or many other stores, you see product lines. In real estate, the product that we sell is residential real estate, land, and commercial. Those are the 3 product lines. And then when we move down that product line, basically there's other branches of what products we sell down that line. And today we're going to slowly talk just about land. And which is interesting, in real estate, everything starts with land. So Clark County, when somebody moved here, and this was a town of 1,000 people, it all started with land. There was no building. There was trees and grass and with nothing else. I actually, when we lived off of Mill Plain and 101st Street, we had a lady who lived down on the street. Her name was Wilma. She died at 104 years old, and she told me how she drove horses on Mill Plain in Clark County. So everything starts with land. Just remember that as real estate brokers. Everything starts with land. And when there's not enough land, guess what happens? People buy buildings, they tear down buildings. For what? For the land, and then they build new buildings. And you see this all the time, especially with bigger city developments or high resort places like in Florida, where people buy lots with houses, tear down the house because of the land. So land has a lot of value if we really understand what's behind it. And oftentimes you cannot make more land, So what are they doing? They're increasing density or going up. That's how inner city developers look at it. They go, hey, 1 million people want to live in New York, but we don't want to spread it, 100 miles wide. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to start stacking it. So land becomes very profitable, just those blocks. And you can, watch New York. They got the billionaire row, millionaire row, all of this. What is it all? It's not about the building. It's about the land and the location. So land as a concept is really huge. And if you can slowly cultivate your understanding about land and its value proposition in real estate, you can actually make a lot of money. So remember, land, residential, and commercial. Today we're just going to talk about kind of the branching out of land. So we have farmland, ranches, subdivision, and city lots. If you just come out of this building and look what's across the street, we have a city lot, right? We have parking space that can eventually be turned into higher density. So those are standalone city lots. Then you have subdivisions. So if you take 5 minutes north of here and you just drive into Hazeldale, you start to see subdivisions that were built in the 70s and the 80s. You see streets and you see improvements and you see cluster of homes, which is subdivisions. Then you have ranches where more like in the Brush Prairie, the Hawkinson area, the Richfield area, even the Woodland area, you see ranches where you see a lot of people building out big houses on bigger lots. And then you have farmland where people own 500 acres, 100 acres, 1,000 acres, where people have farmland, that people own. So when we talk about what is the highest rate of transactions, a lot of us will eventually do lots, city lots, subdivision, and maybe ranches. Farmland, you have to go a lot more farther north or farther east, but you will have clients who will own that. So I have a lot of friends who like ranches. They'll own 1,000 acres in the Dalles, right? Or East Washington or East Oregon and so forth. So those opportunities are out there, but again, it's land. Land is the product. So when you're looking at it, you have to understand what you're truly looking at. And this is part of today's session, is to help us see beyond the grass and the cattle and everything else, land. Any questions on this? We'll go into more details, but this is kind of the first tier of development from the concept of land as a product. And today we're going to kind of do a bird's eye view. We're not going to get into the nitty-gritty stuff unless when during Q&A you guys have some particular questions and maybe your particular case, I'm more than happy to answer. But today we're just going to kind of do a bird's eye view, and then you guys can pull whatever information you want into your package when you're going to do a presentation. But our goal is to kind of equip you as much as we can, and then you guys can take that to your clients. I'll give you another example. One of the brokers last week came to me and said, hey, I have a client in Yakima selling, I think, 80 acres, right? Like, how do we look at that? What do we do with it? What is it worth? So we'll talk about how to derive value out of land on our next slides. So feasibility study. This is really big. Whenever you buy anything, and why I'm going to always compare to residential, because a lot of us do a lot of residential transactions. You buy a house and then you do what? You do research. Yes, feasibility study. You got to do research about what you are buying. In land, it's the same concept. You have to do research of what you are truly buying, because there's just things that you don't know. And part of that process is getting the right vendors to help you. So in residential real estate, our number one vendor is a home inspector. We call our home inspector and we say, hey, I don't understand a lot about houses, but I got a deal and my buyer would like to know more about information about this house. Is the furnace working? Is the water heater working? Is the roof leaking? Help me figure it out. So part of that vendor pool is your home inspector or contractors that help answer these questions that have to do with residential. Well, guess what? The same thing happens in land. You have vendors that help you process through feasibility study. You have your civil engineers, you have your consultants on land, and so forth. So a lot of these people actually help with doing feasibility study on dirt or land. I'm going to go through like the 4 tiers. First is utilities. And I would swap water and power, but you got to figure out if there's power. How do we get power to this piece of property? Because without power, you can't do anything else. You can't have a well, you can't have a septic, you can't have a building. So first is like, where's the power coming from? Do we need to pull a transformer to the property? Do we have to build the infrastructure that's there? So for example, I'll give you a question. Where does the power come to Ilani? Have you ever asked the question? To power up Ilani on I-5, where does the power come from? Yes.
They have their own generator.
Not enough diesel's going up. See, like we don't think about that, right? But if you drive to the east side, there's actually a power station on the east side that pulls all the power under I-5 to the west side. Yeah. And if you drive, take La Center exit, go behind that, I think there's a new gas station. And just north of that, there's a 5-acre parcel, and then you work the street up, and there's actually a station that was built to pull all that power to Ilani. But power, where are we getting our power from? We have to understand where the power is coming from, whether it's a small lot, whether it's a big lot. This building has a transformer in the back of this building. I actually know, because I drive it and I see it. And I even know how much watts it is to power up a commercial building. So power is very crucial. So first is power, then water. So whether it's a farmland, city land, we're talking about the source of water. Where are we getting our water? Is it well? Is it share well? Is it city water? Are we pulling water from the creek, from the pond? Wherever you're getting water, are you using storm drain to, like they do in Hawaii, to gather water in barrels and they use that water? So like you got to figure out where we're getting our water. Then sewer, gas, and storm. So sewer is, where is your sewer going? Whether it's going city or septic. Then your gas, natural gas. And then storm. Where's all the storm draining off? Where's the water, the rainwater, where is it draining to? So a lot of your crawl space issues are oftentimes storm, because the gutter systems overflow on a lot and then they just go into your crawl space. So where's your storm water? And because we have a lot of rain here, right? You better know where it's going. You better figure out where the water is going. So those are utilities. Then survey. Survey is number 2 of importance. Because when you buy land, you better figure out where your boundaries are at. This is probably the number 2 lawsuits that I've seen with even homeowners. No, that fence belongs to me. We're only 6 inches away or 4 inches, and we're fighting, right? Who the fence belongs to, right? Like on a small city lot, just a sec. So what I'm saying is, like, that's the number 2 concern all the time is survey. Go ahead, what's your question?
Oh, I was just adding something to add to it. There's also no such thing as being grandfathered in. And so I learned that this last year.
So yes, what do we need to do to figure out whose properties, where does the fence belong, and so forth? So survey, whether it's a small city lot, whether it's a big lot, whether there's fences up there that we're assuming are boundary lines, which are not, you have to understand where the survey's at. So survey boundaries and fences are usually always, and it's crazy whether it's a big piece of lot, like an acreage, whether it's a small city lot, I'm going to ask, where are our boundaries? This is why you should have really good vendors for surveyors. And they can, they're not too expensive if they just come and locate, like come and figure out where the pins are. It costs a lot more money if they have to do a survey all over. But I'll tell you, almost any lot here, the pins are not there. Or they're buried. Go ahead.
What does an average survey cost?
So if you're just pin locating, it could be anywhere from $500 to $1,000. If they got to run a whole survey, it'll run into thousands, a couple thousands, depending on the lot size. But it's better to pay that than pay an attorney and then pay, court fees. Go ahead. So pin search, that means I know there were pins there, but they got buried.
Okay.
So like the previous owner said, hey, they were here, blah, blah, blah. And you're just saying, hey, surveyor. Or like, I already found 2 pins and I just need to locate one more. So they'll just charge you to locate like one corner. So oftentimes, maybe you don't really care about the front corners, you care about the back corners. So you just tell the surveyor, hey, just pin out one of the corners. So that way you can get your costs down. Because everybody tries to upsell, right? We're in sales, come on. So survey, then site condition. Site condition is really important. Topography, where are we going, right? Is the lot going up, lot going down? Is it tearing to the side? And so forth. So topography is very important when you come, and oftentimes we think it's flat, but I'll tell you the truth, it's not flat. So oftentimes we think this is flat, this carpet's flat. Even though we can check with a rolling ball, see if it... But what I'm saying is most lots are not flat. They topo. Even if they topo a foot or a 2 or 3 or 10, they usually topo one or another direction. So it's important to see topography of lots. It's important to do perk tests. That comes more to those who want to do a septic system. The soil quality, we actually see more and more of that. Geotech reports. Is the soil soft? Is the soil rocky? What type of soil are we working with? Is it clay? So a lot of battleground Ridgefield is clay, like clay. Like the water does not accept water. I mean, the soil does not absorb any more water because it's just clay. So you better figure out where the water needs to go. And we know battleground's just a pond, and they still figure out how to build houses. But I'm just saying that the soil type is very important. And again, the last thing is drainage. After you figure out what kind of soil type, the question is always about drainage.
I was just gonna add on the geotech, I mean, there is an expense to a geotech.
There is an expense to
So if
geotech,
you're
yes.
gonna list land, I mean, you gotta prepare your owner for the fact there may have to be some costs to get the land properly marketable.
Correct. And we'll talk about that, but that's absolutely the case. And actually, the same thing goes for residential real estate now. You better tell your seller to prep the home for market presence. Otherwise, we're not doing anybody any good. Buyers are more pickier. They don't want to spend the money when they buy. So we better tell the sellers that they need to do the prep work for things to be market ready. So site condition and then title search. Ownership, liens, encumbrances, restrictions. CC&Rs, HOAs, all of those are very important. Are there any deed restrictions? Hey, like this is a parcel, we're sharing the road, this is for 3 neighbors, the road is being shared. Who's taking care of improvements? All 3 neighbors are going to improve the road if something happens. So all of these things are important that we just are aware about land. But title search is very important. Oftentimes people never knew there's CC&Rs, and you can't put a mobile home on a 5-acre parcel, but you just can't. You can't. It's not allowable. It's in the CC&Rs. So this is really important that we are preparing ourselves for these questions or these answers as we move through land sales, whether we're representing the seller or we're representing the buyer. Any questions on this? Yes.
Let's just say you have your list of vendors that you trust.
Yes.
How long does the process take that you can communicate with your seller? Hey, if you're looking to sell in 6 months, this is how early we should start the process of getting the place marketable and have all the answers.
So I'd say most of these feasibilities can be done within 30 days.
30 days.
Yes. So title search takes, 3-4 days to get to you, and then your vendors can get back to you. So on a residential, you try to be in 2 weeks. This is about the same. If you got your stuff in order, you got your vendor list, you got your people in line, you could do a pretty good feasibility study within a couple of weeks. Any other questions on this? So product metrics, production metrics, it's really important to understand, I call it the language. So there's a language to even the products of houses, right? We don't call all residential homes. If it's a townhome, it's a townhome, right? If it's a condo, it's a condo. Yes, it's residential. If it's an ADU, it's an ADU. If it's a duplex, it's a duplex. So land has kind of the same metrics of discussion. So when we're talking about subdivisions, we're talking about lots being created, development timelines, infrastructure completion. When we're talking about city lots, we're talking about square footage, we're talking about density, utility access. When we're talking about ranches, they got their layer of issues or concerns. When we're talking about farmland, they have their issues and concerns that you're trying to portray, whether you're talking to a seller or a buyer. I'll focus on the subdivision and the city lots. So people bring a piece of parcel and they say, I have 2 acres, it could be dividable into 20 lots. So the question is, what's the conversation like next? So then you talk about how many lots can we create with this 2 acres. So this is why you have consultants like Eric Galimo, you got a couple others like Joel Sterling, you got civil engineers who can look at a piece of land and say, well, 15% of this piece of land has to go to storm, 15% goes to streets, because you can't just, stack the lot. So you're losing some percentage to streets. You might be losing some percentage for, other aspects of the development. So they help you understand that this 2 acres needs streets, utilities, a storm system. And that's how you build infrastructure into a piece of land that could eventually be built into a subdivision. For example, like Richfield wants designations to parks and recs. So every time you develop something, like 15% has to go to parks and recs. That's why you get a lot of trails in Richfield. Yes, and they actually work one trail into the next trail, into the third trail, because the developers figured out, hey, let's just partner on this because we all have to set aside money to improve this. So now you have, 4, 5, 6 subdivisions, but they have this huge trail going through all of them. Well, because that was part of city planning. So that's what happens with subdivisions. And then there's infill subdivisions, which means it's infill, meaning it's a small lot, and you're trying to squeeze as many lots as you can. And the whole thing with zoning change this year is the densities are increasing. We will live in our garages. Yes, we'll have people living in garages. Yes, yes. Yes, if there will be. But what I'm saying is every aspect of higher density means higher density. That's it. There will be 2 duplexes, 3 duplexes, 2 ADUs, 3 ADUs. We're stacking ADUs on top. There's actually a subdivision off of 53rd I drove. They're actually building 3 units in one house. I actually walked the plan. So one house, 3 different entries, and they're building three residents on one house. On the outside, it looks like just a one house.
So it's shared living space?
Yes, basically.
Like a primary suite type
Well, no, the second floor has its own staircase you have an entry, a small entry, you go upstairs, your whole living's upstairs, and then they split, the main living into like a studio and like a 1-bedroom. But what I'm saying is like, I've never seen that a year or 2 years ago. Now it's, part of production. Go ahead.
I'll say one of the most wonderful things about this program that's adding more to your own property, nobody ever used to want splits. Now everybody wants splits because a split can be 2 houses. So whereas that used to be one of the last houses chosen, but it was the most square footage for your money, now it's one of the first houses chosen as an investment property.
Multi-generational.
Yes. So now when you have a house with a big lot and a person says it's too expensive, well, our job is to throw in a perk and say it might be too expensive now, but when you can fit 2 more units, the cost gets broken up. Go ahead.
So Vancouver, city limits has expanded a lot of their rezoning. So the city of Vancouver wants to annex in unincorporated Vancouver, so they're trying to do that again. They've been working on that for a couple of years. The other piece to that is all of Vancouver. Now, every lot, every property is now residential, has a residential overlay on everything. So you could have warehouses right next to houses next. And they're trying to go up to 6 stories. This is all new. It's coming out. They're finalizing everything now. It's coming out. They want to go up 6 stories. They want commercial space on the bottom, and there's no minimums for parking. No minimums for parking. Let that sink in.
And people tell me, will it happen? I go, absolutely, just go across the river. North Portland, people never thought people would live like that in North Portland, and people do. They buy a 10,000 square foot lot and build 12 units on it, 16 units on a 10,000 square foot lot. So density will go that direction, yes. That's more on the city lot that we just transitioned to from a subdivision. Yes, the concept of city lots is actually going to grow because the higher density, the minute the zoning changes, The investors are after your client's house plus a lot. And again, they want the lot more than they want the house. Because they want to, bless you, they want to go after the density. Your buyer pool. Who buys lots or land? Well, our first it's actually investors, developers, builders, but that's a first pool of people who buy. And the reason is because part of buying land is a short-term and a long-term game for investors. So investors don't look like brokers, meaning a broker wants to close a transaction in the next 60 to 90 days, and investor is willing to sit on something for a couple of years. So that mindset is different. But that is what an investor, developer, builder are looking at. They're looking at the potential that can come out of this land or this piece of property. And that's where I want brokers to also start registering that there is a potential beyond just a piece of land and grass that's 2 feet tall. And the reason we've been able to, lots have been going up in price is because the densities are increasing. And I even tell all my clients that the biggest lots that I sell right now are going to be the last phase. The next phase, I'm going to sell smaller lots, and then the next phase is going to be even smaller. So when clients call me and say, hey, what's the size of this lot? I go, it's 6,000 square feet. They go, do you have anything else? I go, the next badge is going to be 2,500 square feet. And they go, well, that's so small. I go, I'm sorry. That's it. Like, we only have so many 10,000 square feet lots. We only have so many 8,000, we only have so many 5,000, and then we're going into higher density. And this is what we have to be telling our clients. Like land is just going to increase in value over properties. We never sold a lot in Camas for $1 million. We did. We broke that record. You're going to say this is crazy. Yes, it is. $1 million for a piece of lot. I never thought that our market can absorb a lot cost of $1 million. But if a buyer was willing to pay for it, a retail buyer, then that's the price.
And it wasn't big.
Was it, oh, sorry.
It's a Macintosh Ridge, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, so it's like 14,000 square feet. It wasn't acreage.
but it's still a lot, yeah.
It's a gorgeous lot.
Location,
I mean,
But I'm just saying, every time when I came into the industry, we sold lots for 100,000. Then, we had the recession. We were buying lots at 20,000, and then every time it was going up and up and up. And I was like, "Is there a ceiling?" And every time they sell, it's crazy. But go ahead.
What's the average price for a 6,000 square foot lot?
Like 250 and up.
So, in my subdivision, someone just bought a house that was falling apart because my subdivision is like 30 years old. And someone just bought a lot, but it had a house on it that was old and decrepit. And at one point it was a super nice house. They had to pay $1.3 million to buy the property and tear down the house to build a new.
tear down a house.
And typically, what you're building is gonna be 4 times the expense of the lot, because that's what loans want. They want the land to be 25% of the end product, so
is that still
that's a
accurate?
$4 million.
It's really close, yeah.
Yep, it's a $4 million home in Camas.
Yeah.
It's more than that over here, but, yeah.
That's fine.
Yes, it is. But it's our market. That's the reality of our market, right? The Camas, yeah, that happened last year. Yeah, so it's a very recent comp. So I get it, our market's kind of slower than it was at the peak of during COVID or after COVID, but it doesn't stop people from, those who understand what I'm talking about, they're willing to pay that price. So those people who understand that they cannot buy a gated community of acreage homes, that was a model of 30 years ago, and that's not the model of the future, they're going to turn around and pay $1 million, $2 million just for land. So our buyer pool is changing because they understand this concept. Then why our buyer pool is different, that's because our buyer pool comes from cities like Portland, like California, like Seattle, that they've already phased out of that. They already know that. So a lot of the brokers here don't know what the buyer pool is doing when people from Happy Valley are coming here. They had that happen 15 years ago, or Hillsborough, or Seattle, right? So like they're having their density increase even higher than ours. So they've actually lived through that transition while we're living through this transition. And it's very important that we understand this, so we actually are not, I guess, shied away from cultivating those transactions for the buyer pool. We should actually feel confident that, yeah, this transition is happening and this is what people should be willing to pay. And if they're complaining, we should tell them, like, stop complaining because that's it. This is it. This is it. Like, there's nothing else to this. Well, I mean, like, okay, D.R. Horton bought Ginn's project off of 192nd, 2,500 square foot. They paid $175 per lot. You like it or not, 2,500 square feet. That's a 20 by 100 lot, like 20 feet. That's your garage size. 20 feet is a garage size. By 100, sold for 180,000.
Those built ready?
Yeah, those are finished lots. But that's what I'm saying, that all of these items, you know, all of this land and lot prices, they're here to stay. They're not moving.
These big entities have to build.
Yeah.
They literally have an army of people and they need buildable lots, so they're gonna pay the premium. So that you're not gonna see a downturn because their stock price is affected by number of homes built.
Mm-hmm.
Southwest Washington, I know one of the DR people well, and fastest growing region in the whole country. So they're putting money into this area and it's gonna drive up the cost of everything. It's just part of the deal when big institutional money comes that has a plan to build density. Like he's saying, they've already lived through this. They have plans that are ready to go that they can pump out tomorrow that fit on these lots. I mean, they have a big plan, it's a big entity. Anyway.
It's been interesting to me to see Patrick, who, again,
Mm-hmm.
owned a ton of property
Mm-hmm.
and went from developing it, building them, selling them, to developing, building, renting, and now he's just developing.
Mm-hmm.
And he's selling the lots off. So you'll see, again, properties
Mm-hmm.
with the sign saying it's being developed by, and then all of a sudden it's a D.R. Horton neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been an interesting process of adjustment, I
Mm-hmm.
think, just adjusting to the market.
And if you drive Highway 14, I was just driving that this morning, you'll see two DR projects that are Ginn's. Yes, one by Leisure and one by 162nd, yeah.
So my neighborhood
By the
was
Rockery.
built in the 70s
See?
and 80s, big quarter-acre lots. We were a parade of homes back in the day, and now there's D.R. Horton, like right at the entry. And there's 40 of them, and on probably 20 acres, there's another 40 homes.
Mm-hmm.
There's the cottages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the cottages are even smaller.
One thing you guys need to be aware and open your brain when you're listening to everything David teaches, because he is so brilliant, is Patrick Ginn started out as my admin.
Smart
That's a good
kids.
story.
So,
That's really cool.
so it's unreal what you can do
Mm-hmm. In the area of land, yes.
of anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever you're interested in and whatever you want to learn and expand your horizon.
So, perks to help you sell land or lots. The future potential. You've been hearing a lot about that, and I do this a lot with all my buyers, investors, builders. I educate them on what they need to see coming and why they need to pay the price for whatever lots or houses with big lots are. So you have to understand this potential that's coming down the pipeline, and we need to upsell that to our clients. Just like I mentioned, if it's a house with a big lot, you need to say, hey, you know what, in 2 to 3 years, yes, this payment might be high, but in 2 to 3 years, you can maybe increase density, turn your garage into a living space, and rent it out for $1,000. And guess what? If you don't think that's going to happen, go to San Francisco and just walk downtown. And you'll see that people live on every single floor, which used to be a townhome, But now everybody lives on every single floor because they just needed to increase density. The zoning changes, you need to be aware of zoning changes. We try to update zoning changes here. We have our symposiums where you get to meet a lot of builders, developers, vendors in this sector of our business and talk to them about zoning changes. You'll see things change, you'll see things cultivate. It's good to know at least what's taking place. I don't read the law books, but there's land use attorneys that do. So when I need something, I go to them. If you need something, you can come to me. I can redirect you to them, but you have to slowly circle and make yourself known in that sphere. Community features are very important. Just to know what's going on, what's taking place, just like I mentioned to you, why Richfield has, parks and recs and trails is because that's what people have. So when you're upselling something in Richfield, you're going to have to, that's something you can upsell. Hey, you know what? Richfield's unique because every community is going to have a park. You won't find that in Battleground, you won't find that in La Center, you won't find that in Camas, but this is why Richfield's unique. And that's why actually you have a lot of young families in Richfield, and that's why you don't have a high turnover in Richfield. A lot of people live in Richfield to stay there. They want to raise their families there. So there's not a lot of resale business in Richfield because a lot of people are moving there to stay there. Go ahead, you want to say something?
When I remember Pioneer Canyon, I was there selling all those new homes for a builder, and that was one of the biggest draws was the park within it. It was Pioneer Canyon, that very first one. That was one of the biggest draws was the park. That they had the walking path, they had the water resource area, the filtration, natural filtration, plus they had the little parks for the kids. And that was a huge draw for people because that was really the first time that had been done. Clark County. Nobody else had it, and they started it there, and it's still that draw.
And then when you're selling on the seller side or even on the buyer side, it's good to understand concepts of plans. Just have at least a rough understanding because we have a theory, we say the law dictates the house you build. So if it's an acreage lot, right, you can fit almost a pretty huge sizable house. If it's a city lot, if it's 1,000 or 2,000 square feet, most likely you're only going to fit a cottage. There's nothing else you can fit on that lot. So the law dictates the house you build. So it's really important to know kind of what you can truly build as of infrastructure, and you upsell that to a client. If it's a downslope, there's going to be a basement. If it's an upslope, there's going to be stairs. So these are just simple concepts that we have to slowly embrace in our conversations and just when we're talking to people. For example, when we built in Washougal, I had a lot of builders built in Washougal. We talked about buyer pool, but a lot of the buyers were people coming down from the mountains. They were done living on topos, right? And that's the perk. They don't want any more stairs. So we had a lot of people coming down from the mountains. When you're talking about Richfield big lots, like Dustin Ho has that project on the west side, we're seeing the same thing we saw in Battleground. A lot of people selling their acreage and moving to bigger lots. So they still want their RV parking, they still want a big garage, but they don't need 5 acres, with a 5,000 square foot garage. So you see these buyer pools making these decisions, and when you see these buyer pools making these decisions, so like the waterfront, right? People who live in the waterfront, actually, we had a broker who sold a lot of waterfront, and I asked her, what's your buyer pool? I'm always curious, who are the people? And she's like, oh, half of them are Vancouver people selling and just wanting to live, experience the waterfront, and then others are people from other cities. Well, I kind of expected that, but I just wanted to reaffirm what was the buyer pool. So it's really important to know house plans, so you can, like Patty mentioned about the split level, right? So if I were to sell a split level and a person said, I don't like split level, I would say the future is phenomenal for split levels. So that is a perk I would introduce in our conversation. Because a lot of split levels have big lots. And I can pull up the MLS and reconfirm that over and over and over. A lot of the split level homes have really big lots. Financing of land, I'm not going to stay too long, but there are credit unions, institutional money, and private money that do fund land, just like residential. It's a different vendor pool or different lender pool, but there are lenders. I'll give you an example. If you sit down with Giza Credit Union, they have a lot of land programs just like residential. I know Banner Bank was a huge contributor. Columbia Bank, they have programs. So a lot of your credit unions do have financing for land, and they will underwrite your client and give them even a 30-year mortgage on land and lots. So don't shy away from telling your client this is not financeable. They are financeable. There's programs out there that can finance land and the purchase of lots and land. So 3 pillars to selling real estate. This is just kind of the broad spectrum. And when you come to, because this is more on the listing side, there's 3 things that help you sell a home, a product. It's product, price, and marketing. Look at your product. What are we working with? Are we working with farmland? Are we working with a city lot? Are we working with a subdivision? What are we working with? Then it's all about price, and then it's about marketing. What is the price of the product? How do you derive value? And then what is the marketing? How are we going to market this with the perks so we can upsell or give enough information over to the buyer for them to make a decision? Questions?